Hello, I'm Judy Stiles. Thank you for joining us this week on Newsmakers. Well, summer's always a busy time for road construction, and if you're anywhere near Joplin or in Joplin, you see a lot happening. Today we're focusing on the city of Joplin, many projects that are going on now, as well as what's planned in the future. Joining me, Dan Salisbury with the Joplin Public Works Department. Thank you for being here today.
Well, thank you. I'm looking forward to it.
I guess to talk about the pace of work in Joplin, busy is probably understating it this year.
It is. I think sometimes we feel like we're drowning. But it's a good thing because it's saving taxpayers a lot of money with all the recovery funds coming into the area, and we're working really hard to make the maximum use out of those funds that we can.
Great. And then you mentioned the funds. So just to explain, people are saying, how can Joplin afford to do all of this? It's not just your tax revenue from sales tax. There's a lot of federal relief funds, other things tying into this.
Yes. HUD, Housing and Urban Development, has provided a tremendous amount of funding for the recovery. Last year, citizens got to see funding being spent from the Department of Economic Development with the state of Missouri. And then in 2014, citizens passed the capital improvement sales tax here, and we have all those projects kicking off as well. So there are just numerous projects, and we're busy all the time in public involvement in the early phases of those projects, and it's just a real exciting time.
You mentioned public involvement. Is that a key part of the picture, that keeping the people informed about what the plans are, what your goals are?
It absolutely is, and that's one thing that I heard last year over and over and over, is that you pull into our neighborhood and start digging with your contractor, and no one's told us anything about the project. So our whole public involvement is much, much different. We actually, on our new projects, go out on day one, many times before we've even hired a consulting engineer, and we talk to those property owners most impacted by the project. That's generally the ones that are immediately adjacent. And we just start out by listening to them. And it's amazing the interaction that develops from that and the teamwork that develops. And the way I look at it is we do a little bit of engineering to their ideas. We very seldom have to tell people no, because we have a budget. We can't go over it. And most people, once they understand that, work with us. And a lot of times they'll actually contribute in little ways toward the project, and it's just neat to see that and experience it.
So communication makes a big difference.
Right, and then we'll do our regular public involvement, our normal open house public meeting, but at that point many of those property owners have seen the plans develop 2 to 3 times, sometimes 4 times. We meet as many times as it takes to get on the same page with people. On the smaller projects, we'll send out letters kind of letting people know, and then if they want to talk, we can do that individually or in a group. But those are some of the techniques we're doing, and again, the teamwork and interaction from folks has just been tremendous.
So there's a lot of lead time before a project even turns dirt. I mean, you've got many years in the making, basically.
Yeah, a lot of people don't realize that. To properly go through a project, a big widening of a street that requires land acquisition, you know, in my mind, I always think 3 years. And most people think next summer. But to go through and do the proper public involvement, to acquire land in a way that's respectful for the property owner, you really need to be out there talking to them a lot. And what I've noticed is that most people adjust to change, but they don't do it immediately. We all do it at different paces. Some do it immediately, some take a while. And it's important to allow that time to happen. And when we do, then it seems like we get great cooperation from folks. And again, the public involvement to me is the most fun thing that I do, because many of our meetings are completely interactive. We'll go with an aerial photo in the beginning, nothing on it, and just listen and work back and forth.
So you're hearing from the people who are using those streets, those roads, and
Absolutely.
What they don't like about it, what they'd like to have.
And they contribute ideas. Every once in a while we'll have property owners contribute little strips of land to, you know, and if we can hold down the cost somewhere, they can get something that they want on the project. And that's the teamwork it's just tremendous. And then sometimes their ideas are ways that we can save money. So if we can save money on part of a project, we can spend a little bit more on another part of the project.
Obviously you have a limited budget on certain things.
We do, but we have a budget on every project, and we can't go over it. It's just like anything else, you know, when you're out of money, you're out of money. and we'd have to take money from another project, and that's not always fair either. So once we get that communicated, people are very responsible and make good decisions.
Right. I'd like to take some time today to show some of the things that are underway as well as plans to kind of help with that communication for the community and look around Joplin. I know one of the biggest things that's perhaps the most noticeable is 20th Street and the railroad overpass that's been going on, and people look at it now and say it's got to be getting close. And we have some video, so while we're talking we can look at the video and kind of describe what's happening there.
Great. Yeah, this is the overpass. I believe we're looking at the east side at the current time. This was taken about a week ago and showing the project nearly done. There's some barrier curbs that we need to have the concrete poured, and then the approach roadways need to be constructed, and we'll need to add lighting. But I think people are just going to love this project when it's open to traffic, because no longer will there be a threat of a collision with a train, and it's the ultimate in safety. But I think even more important, it lets people get where they want to go without stopping. You know, in the last year, we have days where we have 20 trains a day, and those trains are really long, and you have to sit there quite a while. And something that the average citizen may not know is that every railroad, including this one, wants additional space for a second track. So imagine 20 trains a day now at some future time when there's a second track and you have a lot more trains, you're going to stop a lot.
So that's why you have that bigger gap underneath. There's physically there's room when they need that someday. Right.
And this is kind of, I think, getting over to the west side. Well, we kind of lost the high school. It didn't show up. But the video is courtesy of Anderson Engineering. They were good enough to do this for us, and we really appreciate that because it's a unique view of the bridge.
Gives you a different perspective of really the whole area and the project.
One thing too I'd like to share here is this project is on schedule. A month ago I thought we were way ahead of schedule. The schedule is for it to open on August 27th. And I think we're ahead of schedule at this point. How much, I'm not quite certain, but we are ahead of schedule, and that reflects one of the things that we're trying to do on all of our projects is whenever we go into construction to actually build them on the schedule that we set out. So citizens don't have to experience the disruption of a project.
Right, they are inconvenienced as it is taking the detours, and they're looking forward to those times that we can go straight across town again.
And one thing I'd point out on this project is we did close the road, and that saved almost half. I wouldn't say it's not quite half. I did experience another project in another community a few years ago where we didn't close the road, and it takes longer to do that, and it costs about double. And so that allowed a lot of other projects in the area to be constructed.
So, and this will be, as of course, 20th Street being a key corridor that you're looking at for future development. This is like piece one of what the future of that area
is. Yes, this is just the first phase. There's another neat project that we'll talk about here in a few minutes. But one thing on this bridge, the sidewalks are a little over 8 foot wide, and that's wide enough for pedestrians and bicyclists to share the roadway. And I think they're going to come to really love that because it's so much safer for a bicyclist to be up away from the curb and it's a little further from vehicles.
So that becomes a bike route across town as well. Right. So I know that's a question people are probably asking, when are we going to get to drive on it? So in August we should be able to have that traffic.
That should be, and I'll be disappointed if we don't beat that by quite a bit. But it's really hard to predict a construction completion. The weather's a time, the contractor and his subcontractors are all issues in that. So, you know, it's take out your crystal ball, and I hate to do that too much. But.
Right, to try to look at that. Well, that's one of the major projects underway. Moving to the north side of town, people see dirt being moved along Zora, and I know we have some pictures and kind of talking about the Range Line to Main Street project. And if you don't live on the north side of town, you may not see it, but I know there's construction underway there, where you've moved a lot of dirt at least.
Oh, we have. And something that we implemented for the very first time in the city of Joplin, and it has to do with public involvement, is a construction public meeting, where about a week before construction started, we had an open house meeting where citizens could come in and just see the plans. It wasn't for comments because we already had a
You
contractor.
knew what you were going to build, right?
And we had the contractor there, and they could share the sequencing of that contract and ask questions, and the citizens could see who with the city was going to be involved and make some contacts. And I think that just helps remind everyone that we have a project and here's what it is. Sometimes the official public involvement occurs years prior to the actual construction, so this just makes it fresh on everybody's mind. And if anybody moves into the area, then they can know about it as well.
What's happening? Well, we have some pictures, if we can call the Zora widening video. Of course, a lot of it looked like it started off with the stormwater system.
Oh yeah, we have a completely new stormwater system in there. This is a drop inlet where eventually there'll be pavement built there and the water will drain over.
I know they put the big storm pipes that go in with it and tying it all together.
Right.
So
that's all tied together. And this is showing the widening on the south side of the road. Right now that's all earthwork, but eventually you'll see base rock be applied, and then you'll see curb and gutter and sidewalk be constructed, and last you'll see asphalt pavement being constructed.
So this is as you go all the way between Main Street and Range Line. We're seeing this type of work on the side.
Yes. And you know, like any project, we're working very hard to have this done this construction season. And like most of our projects, when you actually get into it, they're always a little more complicated than you think.
Some little problem pops up.
But you know, we've worked very hard on our relationship with the utilities, and we've had a few issues there, and they're being extremely responsive. So we think that we can still get this done this year, and again, we're working very hard on that.
You mentioned the utilities. We see the power poles that, you know, before you can widen the street, you have to move the poles. You have to move things like that.
And even the things underground are the much more difficult things because you can't see them until you dig it out. So.
For people's information, how wide is the street going to be when it's finished?
It'll be 5 lanes wide.
Okay.
And one thing I'll point out is there is a trail crossing that's a little bit east of St. Louis Avenue.
The jogging trail, right.
And right now it's 3 lanes wide, and it during a busy traffic time, it's hard to cross there safely. And so just imagine what it'll be like with 5 lanes.
More traffic.
So something that we're adding is it's a 5-lane section, that center turn lane. We don't need it to turn vehicles at that point, so we're going to actually construct a little raised median, and then pedestrians can come up and focus on the 2 lanes of oncoming traffic, cross to the middle, and turn and focus on the 2 other lanes of oncoming. So
they have kind of a safe island in between them.
And it's much safer that way. It'll be safer than it is today.
And will you maintain the, I think it's 35 miles per hour speed limit through there with the traffic?
Yeah, we will. After the project is open to traffic, we're going to go in and actually do another speed study.
Okay.
And I think we did lower that by 5 miles an hour after the public meeting sessions. That's just temporary. So likely the speed limit will go back to the original speed limit immediately after construction, but then we'll do a speed study sometime in that first year and just verify what it should be.
Now the ultimate goal is connecting Range Line and Main Street with an east-west corridor.
Well, actually the ultimate goal is a north loop around Joplin.
So this is part of a bigger picture.
Yeah, it would stretch from Missouri 249 to Schifferdecker.
Okay.
This is the first fully developed segment of that roadway. And the segment from Missouri 249 to Range Line is another approved project that'll be happening in the next few years. And then we have a bridge project on North Schifferdecker that will also aid in that loop around
kind of the west
Joplin.
side of what's happening. And I know we have some pictures. We'll just continue talking as the pictures come up and kind of describe what people are seeing. And we have some more. This is the part of some of the areas planning widening then, I understand. This is I guess the east side of Zora, when you're talking about taking it on out to 249, it looks like, perhaps?
It kind of looks like that. I have to say right now, I'm not sure that I know exactly where that is.
Yeah, here we are, 249.
Here we are. Okay. And we've been talking to property owners now 2 or 3 times. They've given us some good feedback. Our engineer is kind of developing what we call preliminary plans, and we'll show them to the property owners one more time, and then we'll do an official public meeting. we like property owners to see the impact of their property in a little more private setting, and then when everyone comes, they'll kind of know what's going to happen. But we're going to widen it to at least 3 lanes, and we're going to try to do an improvement at the intersection of Duquesne Road, which is likely to be a roundabout.
Okay, and here with a train track, obviously a hill where you go down and hit a train track. So that
Right.
would be another.
We're going to do our best to improve sight distance through there. And again, it's kind of controlled by budget, so many of the final decisions will be made as we move into final design. But
Now this street is kind of technically a border between Webb City and Joplin, isn't it? Kind of a.
yeah, actually Webb City owns part of it, and at the end of the project, all of it will become the property of the city of Joplin.
Joplin will maintain it
Right.
from then on.
And we have agreements with Webb City and Jasper County, and that's kind of instrumental in us moving forward because it does allow us to go through the condemnation process if necessary. We didn't want to expend a lot of funds and then find out we couldn't do it, so it was pretty necessary to have that agreement first.
So this road will be wider, once again, obviously reaching 249 for that other part of that stretch you were talking about, tying things together.
Yes,
So-
it will.
So a lot of projects going on. We have the north side of town. Let's go back to what else is happening. I understand you also have some work on St. Louis planned as well.
Yes, and that's the kind of the second thing that I heard last summer was, that your projects aren't getting done on time, and it's important to do that. I think when we tell people we're going to build it this year, let's build it this year, and so we're doing a lot of things to make that happen.
To try to push the schedule along.
We have actually acquired the land necessary to adjust utilities. We've got 2 properties to acquire, which we will have shortly. But our utilities have already designed where they're going to move their facilities to, and they're actually starting the process of doing that.
So when we drive on North St. Louis, we see telephone
Right.
poles being moved. That's part of that project.
And so our goal then is to bid this project out in the fall or early winter. And there's 2 reasons for doing that. One, it is the most economical time to do that. Imagine if you're a contractor and it's before Christmas, can you tell your employees that, yeah, you got work for next year? And there's something about bidding it out at that time that they're very competitive. If you wait until May or June, they've already got some work. They're not sharpening their pencil quite as much. So we get great bids, but it also allows them to acquire all of their construction materials that they need,
Right.
get all the permits, get everything lined out, all their subcontractors ready, and then when the weather breaks in the spring, they can charge and they can have the whole construction season in order to build it. And one thing we're trying very hard is to never go beyond a construction season. Our projects aren't that big that we should ever have to do that if we manage them properly.
What is considered the construction season in this area?
I would say March to probably the end of November.
Okay, so avoid those hard winter months when obviously
Right.
you're going to have the snow and the bad weather.
And if we can make it shorter than that, we will.
Okay. But one advantage of being in southern Missouri, you do have a little longer season than other parts
Yep.
of the state, and tying that together. Well, let's continue to look at some of the pictures. We can describe what people are seeing and what's coming up with projects and what's being planned. So this is some of the utility pole movement.
Yeah, this is a utility company moving their poles. Again, this is a utility you can actually see above ground. And they're the easy ones because we can all see them. But the ones that are a challenge are the ones that are underneath the ground.
like the gas lines and the
Right.
underground.
And that's something in the process. We're trying to give the utilities time to do their work. And that's not been the norm here. And I think they appreciate that. We're still trying to get everybody to focus as we need to really get it done well, but we're making good progress in that area. And I think a lot of it is cooperation and teamwork with everybody involved. It includes city staff, our consultants, and the utilities and contractors, and it's just like one big team. And if we all kind of understand that we're working for the customer and not always just ourselves, I think we'll get a good result.
And that's an example of another road that basically has no shoulder. You have 2 lanes, so
Yes.
you're improving the safety features as well as the traffic capacity.
It'll go to 3 lanes with a center turn lane, a bike lane on both sides, and sidewalks on both sides. And the people we dealt with were just great. It's that change component. I like to tell people that I might be an engineer, but I think leading people through change is a bigger part of my job than doing the engineering, because everybody gets concerned. They can't quite visualize what's going to happen.
Right.
And that's where the engineers can kind of look at it and say, yeah, I know what's going to happen. And we got to be patient to help people understand, and everybody does it at a different pace.
Especially if somebody's lived in that area for a long time. That road's always been that way. I can't imagine it any other way.
It's very challenging for them. But again, if we're patient and we talk to them over a period of time, they all seem to come around.
Now, you have other plans for other widening projects. I know 32nd Street, growing area towards Schifferdecker in the west side of town.
Oh, yeah, that's a really neat project. When you look at that pavement, in fact, right now, some of it is owned by Newton County, some by Jasper County, and we have agreements with them to move forward. We're handling the design, but you can see the condition of the pavement is not good.
It's been patched, it's been old pavement.
And you can also kind of see the steep hills. And I thought at our very first meeting with the property owners, the very first speaker said, we don't need to do anything. And it was interesting that every other person in the room before the night was over challenged that. And it's showing here the fire station and out around St. Mary's Church. We have a really neat story to tell there. We recently, and I think this is showing the church and through there, and that's near Central City Road. We recently had some EDA funding, Economic Development Administration funding, that became available. And we needed to spend it by a certain time in 2018.
So you have a timetable you have
to
meet.
In engineering world, that's not a lot of time. And we're going to use it to do that intersection and then go east as far as we can on 32nd. But the thing that made that happen was every property owner at that intersection donated the land that we needed for it, and it just took about a year off of the whole schedule and made it possible. So if everything goes according to plan, in 2017 people will start to see some construction out there, and that'll be the first glimpse of what the overall project will be. We're going to widen to 3 lanes, but we're going to buy land for a future 5-lane throughout that area.
So you have room to grow as that area grows into that part of town.
And I know that there's a lot of citizens out there that we've talked to, and we will be out probably in July. It seems like I keep sliding back, but we get overwhelmed with all the things we have going on, and we'll be out to show them kind of the preliminary plans. Many have been calling, and they're anxious, and we'll show that.
Us what's going to happen.
And then we'll have the official public meeting and let everybody see it. So.
Well, let's move on to some other pictures and see what we have in the area that we can talk about with, of course, people might recognize this, the low water bridge area. You're replacing the low water bridge, I guess.
Well, yes, we have a project there. This is one of the more complicated hydraulic situations that you have. We have some of the top hydraulic people in the state working on this. And we've got several options to look at, and it hasn't been easy. It hasn't gone as fast as I hoped it would. We're looking at one option of replacing the bridge on the existing alignment, and then we had another group that said, well, what if we moved it a little distance from that and tried to save that bridge? So we have that option as well, and we haven't quite finalized all of the data. And that's another one that we'll be going out and talking to people, and it's fairly complex, and it may take us a while to get on the same page with both groups. There are 2 groups there with differing opinions on what needs to happen, and again, we have a budget to work with and everything like that.
So this is a good example of you're in the discussion stage now.
We are, and we're not going to hurry this one because we want people to feel like they've been heard. And so we'll keep working until we get to that point.
Get to the agreement that what we want to do. So moving on, of course, Main Street has some plans changed for it. It looks like an intersection here, Main and 15th.
Yes, this is showing an enhanced pedestrian crossing. Okay. And this is also, when we started these projects, we actually talked to property owners from day one. And kind of the basics of the project, they help guide. But when we got into, if there's money left over, we need to do some enhancements, the the number one item was enhancing the pedestrian crossings. And on Main Street, that is on 15th, 20th, and 26th Street. And on 20th Street, it's at Indiana and 20th and right on Indiana, right leading into the high school.
So some of the heavily trafficked areas of those intersections, right?
And then around the new library at 20th and Connecticut, and then there's a transit stop to the east. And those we chose, but if you ever notice, the pedestrian crossings are painted white paint. And over the year, that paint tends to chip off and fade, and you don't see them as well. And so we're going to put in terracotta red stamped pavement that'll be permanently red, and it'll stand out and it won't wear off.
So it'll be obvious this is a pedestrian crossing.
And I think that'll help. So.
Right. Well, you have a lot of projects going on, and we've kind of hit the tip of the iceberg with a lot of things, and a lot of projects still in the works and discussion and future planning. Some of the parts of town we've shown, even 32nd Street's even in line for some changes down the road on the East 32nd Street.
We have a neat opportunity there. It's a Tiger grant that might allow us to build a railroad overpass in the area of Davis Boulevard, but again, it's a very competitive process nationwide where all states and cities compete for a little dab of money, and we'll see how we do. I think we have a good application, but it's extremely competitive.
So working in public works is there's nothing static. Everything is what we're doing now, what we can do for the future, what can we do beyond the future.
You're exactly right. And every year when we look at what we can do, it kind of makes you sick, because I think I hear, and others in public works hear every day from people, well, you need to do this and you need to do that. A lot of
suggestions, right?
And there are literally hundreds of millions of dollars of unfunded needs. If you just added them all together, every citizen seems to have an idea for what we need to do, and we just simply can't afford them all. And so we hit the high points of that, and we keep working at it. And I think we try to be as cost effective as we can so we can get as many projects done as possible.
Great. Well, Dan, I'd like to thank you for sharing information. You have a website. Obviously, the City of Joplin has a website if they'd like to look at that, or they can probably even contact your office for more
Certainly.
details.
Anybody can call our office, and we'll try to help them with whatever question they have.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for being here today.
Okay, thank you.
And I'd like to thank you, the viewers, for joining us this week on Newsmakers. I'm Judy Stiles. Hope you can join me again next week at the same time on this station. We'll see you then.